Hey there, eyes-free sports fans. Kickstart your health and wellness journey with a twist. Introducing Couch to Active, where health and fitness for the blind and visually impaired community finally gets the fun treatment it deserves. Couch to Active offers personalized one-on-one coaching, exciting group classes on Zoom, and expert guidance in weight management. It's not just about getting fit, it's about having a blast while doing it. I've personally tried their classes and have thoroughly enjoyed them. Don't miss out on the fun. Join the Couch to Active community today and start your journey to a healthier and happier you. Learn more at couch2active.com, couchtoactive.com, or call 206-672-2070, 206-672-2070. Couch to Active, where fitness and fun go hand in hand. Hello, and welcome to episode 105 of the Eyes Free Sports podcast. My name is Greg Lindberg. Here on episode 105, our guest is a gentleman from the Fort Worth, Texas area who is actually in the Baseball Hall of Fame, is a longtime runner, and has competed in a number of adaptive sports for the blind and visually impaired. In addition, he also worked for nearly 40 years in the field of vocational rehabilitation and has some interesting points on employment for the blind. So let's get moving now with episode 105. All right, so my guest here on this episode of Eyes Free Sports is Scott Hudson, and Scott is actually a National Beat Baseball Association Hall of Famer, a longtime marathon runner, and overall just very accomplished adaptive athlete. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Greg. I've really been looking forward to it.
Awesome. Really appreciate you taking the time. And I did want to mention a recent guest I had on, Wendy Fagan, actually recommended that I reach out to you, and I'm just super honored to chat with you here today.
Great.
So why don't we just kick things off here with just your background as far as where you're originally from and your early years.
Okay. Well, I was born in the extremely small town of 3,000 people in West Texas, named Colorado City. It's about 5 hours west of Dallas, for those people not familiar with Texas. It's in the middle of the desert with lots of mesquite trees and tumbleweeds and like that. And I have retinitis pigmentosa, which is hereditary. Probably a lot of y'all know. So my mom, my sister, and me had it. We're the only three blind people in Colorado City. So that created some real challenges. Needless to say, growing up.
No doubt, yeah, and just I'm sure not a whole lot of access to resources and whatnot in a small town, right?
Correct.
Gotcha. So as far as education, were you mainstreamed, or where did you go to school?
I was. I went to public school. I went to school in the late 50s and 60s, graduated from high school in 1970. And as those people are familiar with retinitis pigmentosa, I was born night blind and I had tunnel vision, but my central vision was still fairly good. I could read regular size print up until I was in junior high, and then I moved to large print. So, the school system really didn't know a lot what to do with me, but my mom was a genius at resources. And when I got in high school and got where it was difficult to read, she found a place that would tape my books. And then I had large print books too. And then the teachers, you'd think in a small town would be very closed-minded and narrow-minded, but they were really amazing. They gave me my test orally. They printed out stuff in large print. When I had to take like the SAT test, it was all verbal. They'd read, like I say, read my test to me. My dad would record stuff that wasn't on there. So it was took a village to solve the problem. But the school district was, very accommodating. And in some ways it would have been nice to go to school for the blind, at least later on, just to learn better socialization and like that. In fact, I was going to say, like, one of my turning points is my junior year of high school. My mom had found out that they had a summer program at the School for the Blind in Austin for kids that were from around the state that, were mainstream, but they didn't, of course, back then they didn't have DI teachers. And so when I went there, that's the first time I ever met another blind person in my life. And I was so blown away because some of the kids there went to the School for the Blind, and they were so independent and so self-confident. Their mobility skills were incredible. And I was just like, oh my God, this is what I can be. And even though I was scared to go, by the time I left, I was just, just didn't want to leave. And then after I graduated from school, I went to what then was called Arkansas Enterprises for the Blind, because that was a rehab center for college prep. And that's where I kind of honed my other skills, my mobility skills, braille skills, things like that to prepare for college. So those was a big turning point in my life, is just meeting other blind people and building confidence.
Exactly. Yeah. And I also like, I know you mentioned your parents and their support, and I was also lucky enough to have and still have, super supportive parents who have kind of advocated for me at times and also taught me how to advocate, so that's, we're definitely grateful. I think we can both say that as far as our parents go.
Absolutely.
So then as far as college, you did go to college?
Yes, I went, I got my undergraduate degree in San Angelo State, which was another smaller college, about 6,000 people. And once again, I was the only blind person there. And it was that whole deal again of, in all, anyone listen to this that is blind, is just like, they've had to, everyone's had to go through this. You have to educate your professors. You have to, ask permission to take the lectures. You have to arrange, to have tests given. You have to arrange to get readers. You have to, do all this self-advocating on your own. And when you're just 18 and you're from a small town, and your self-confidence is really not that great because you're not used to talking to, especially like doctors, doctor degrees, and, tell them what you need. It's very nerve-wracking. But, the training and help I got while I was in summer school at School for the Blind and Arkansas Enterprise for the Blind kind of prepared us to do that. And, the professors, you had some that were not as open-minded, but in general, they were all, very supportive. And then I got my master's degree at University of Texas in vocational rehabilitation.
Oh, nice. So you are a Longhorn.
I am. I bleed orange.
Yep, they got a big game coming up tomorrow. And
they do.
We're recording this before the playoffs. So.
Yeah, I can hardly wait.
Yep. Would be cool to see them move on.
Yes.
So then as far as your career, so I know you mentioned majoring in, it was vision rehabilitation, right?
Yes, that's majored in vocational rehabilitation. I got my master's in that. And it was, the timing couldn't have been better because the VR Act, Adults with Disability Act of 1973, opened up a lot of vocational rehabilitation jobs. And so it was a hot area to get employment in. And I had just graduated. So I'll never forget, and I'm sure Greg and you of your other listeners face the same thing. I didn't have the opportunity that I wanted to work and get work experience through high school and college, because first off, I wasn't aware of what I could do. And by then my vision was, as a cane user, my vision was even worse. And, employers certainly didn't do. So I just concentrated on academics. Well, when I started applying for jobs, they wanted work experience. Well, you got your education, but what about work? And I it's so frustrated because I thought, oh my God, I made it through my master's. I can do this. But they just, hard to break through the door. And I had when I first applied at what was then called the Texas State Commission for the Blind, the interviewer said, look, go get some experience, a year or two, and then come back and we'll think you'd be great. Well, I was fortunate. I was living in a little town called Lufkin at that time, and they had the counselor for the Commission for the Blind there had an inn. Back then, it was called a CETA program, which was a work program where the government would actually pay the employer part of the salary if they would hire, someone that was, disabled or economically disadvantaged. So I got hired on a Title 20 daycare center as a social worker, which I had no experience at, knew nothing about kids, but they hired me on, and I really enjoyed it and worked there 2 years. And then an opening came open in Fort Worth for, a job with the Commission for the Blind, and got it and worked there 37 years.
Wow. Almost 4 decades. That's amazing.
Awesome job.
Yeah. And I'm sure you had many, many clients. And did you work kind of on the client side then?
I did. It's the whole deal. I guess every state has a vocational rehabilitation program, but primarily my job was as a coordinator to people walk in that were blind that wanted to work. And my job was to coordinate to get them, first off, all of the independent living skills so they could, compete in employment or get education. And once, by going to a rehab center and rehabilitation teachers, and O&M instruction, adaptive technology training, everything they needed to prepare themselves, and then assisted them in, we would pay for college or trade school training and then help them find employment. And it's very rewarding because, I got to see hundreds and hundreds of people go to work. And, that's what it's all about, get people to work.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure just, seeing folks walk in the door and then, like you said, their journey to employment and a rewarding career, I'm sure was really rewarding for you as well.
Mm-hmm. And, like the unemployment rate is very high for visually impaired, around 60 or 70%. A lot of it is just lack of opportunity or knowledge, or of rehab agencies, or the hassle you have to go through, and finding employment, convincing an employer to hire you. But I was very, very fortunate.
Absolutely. And that does remind me of something I'd read not too long ago about that statistic of unemployment, especially in the blind community, and really how that has not changed since the 70s. 50 years, which is kind of scary. You'd think with technology and maybe a little more awareness about, what people with disabilities can do as time has gone on, but yet that number remains, pretty stagnant.
Yeah, they keep moving the goal post because, technology comes around. Well, and, that's great. You learn the technology. Well, time you learn that technology, they've got new apps, new programs, that speech software hasn't caught up with yet, or large print. So they do that. It's just constantly moving the goals. And other, problem is a lot of the stuff to keep you competitive. You're having to deal with multiple screens and move from one to the other and process information in a very fast manner. And no matter how you good are with adaptive equipment, you just can't do it as fast with someone with 20/20 vision. So it's just a challenge to meet the requirements that they have.
Exactly, no question. All right, so then moving on to sports. So as a kid, I assume you did play some sports growing up?
Oh my gosh, Greg, I know this is going to sound so Texan, but everything you've heard about Texas in small town sports is absolutely true. The whole town turns out for every sport there is: baseball, volleyball, basketball, everything. So the time, as long as I can remember, I was into sports because my dad, took me to everything. So I wanted to, participate in everything I could. And my dad was an extremely good athlete, and I was fortunate enough to inherit a lot of his abilities. But my vision was poor enough for baseball and basketball and football. I could play just, with other friends and like that. but the depth perception was very difficult for those sports to do it well. So in high school, track and field was the one thing I could do with the vision I had, and did really well at. Though my favorite was always baseball. And so when I went in 1977, when I was hired at the Commission for the Blind, they sent me down to Austin for a 1-month training. And I met a couple of guys named Tommy Craig and Mike Martin that had found out about beat baseball through the Braille Sports Foundation. And they'd actually got some equipment, and they were just kind of starting to play. And they taught me it. And I just was like, and I think a year before, 2 years before that's when they had the very first World Series. And so, I just fell in love with it. So when I got back to Fort Worth, I got together with some other blind people and the Lighthouse for the Blind, and they got enthusiastic about it. And we, formed a team. And then in 1978, we played our first game, an exhibition game against Houston. And then the next year, we really started going. Formed a Texas league, and at one time, 1980, we had like 10 teams just in Texas.
Oh, wow!
It was so we played each other, all the time. And then in 1979 is we went to our first World Series in Topeka, Kansas, and our very first tournament we finished third. And
wow!
And then when we played, we won. Let's see, 3 World Series. We finished second 7 times and third 4 times. We never finished out of the top 6 in the 20 years I played beat baseball. We always finished in the top 6.
That's amazing.
We had a tremendous team. We had one of the best pitchers, Frank Mathena, that's in the Hall of Fame too.
Oh yeah, definitely know the name.
And we had all of our people, guys on our team were, extremely good athletes, and had lost their vision. They were natural athletes. Unfortunately, in the 80s, we ran upon Albuquerque. We won like 7 or 8 World Series in a row that were like one of the legacy teams. And then in the 90s, Austin came around and they won like 9 in a row. And so just, it's like, oh my gosh, that's why we kept finishing second and third. We couldn't get past those.
Right. Kind of like the Patriots or, the Chicago Bulls, one of these dominant teams that just dominated their era.
Yes.
Wow. So then you personally, any moments or any games that really stand out to you, any plays maybe that you were involved in your career?
Oh yeah, there was 3 really, that when we won our first World Series in 1980, and then we were playing against BSF to see who went to the championship game, and I got the winning hit, and then the one that still hurts to this day. In 1995, we were playing Austin in Colorado for the World Series, and we were playing the championship game, and they'd already won once. So we won the first game and played back the second game, and we came in to the bottom of the 6th, tied up, and we were behind by 1 run, and the leadoff batter Roy got a run. I struck out, the next guy struck out, the next guy grounded out. We ended up in extra innings and ended up losing. It just broke our hearts. Here we had a chance with 3 outs to win, and we didn't. So that was horrible.
No doubt. Yep.
But we did win 3 World Series, and it's kind of poignant because when we won in 1991, our pitcher said, told us to smell the grass and enjoy it because, in baseball, you never know when you're going back. And sure enough, we never won another one.
Exactly. Savor it, and just you never know, like you said. And I know like in this day and age, some teams actually do have championship rings and different things. Do you actually have any rings or anything to represent those titles?
No, back then it really wasn't a thing, and we didn't do that. Just, the trophies from winning. And then I was fortunate enough to be in the All-Star team, 10 times. And so I had that, from being on the All-Star team. And it's one of those things is I'm not big. I'm like 5'11" and weighed 160, but I was blessed with extremely good speed. So I always was, like in the top in hitting. A lot of that was just because of speed. And that's why I ended up in the Hall of Fame, is because my lifetime batting average was so high.
Wow. And just talk to me about, learning of your induction and when that was and just kind of what that meant to you.
It was probably one of the top 3 most significant things that ever happened in my life, because like I was telling you, I absolutely loved sports of all type and was just sick that I never could play them. Then all of a sudden, I found about baseball, the United States Association of Blind Athletes, and go ball, and all these sports. And all of a sudden, you're participating in them. And then to be recognized in the Hall of the Fame, I was nominated in 2022, but I actually got in 2023 because the World Series is in Oklahoma City. It was easier for me to get there. And our Frank, our pitcher, actually came up and did the introduction and handed me the plaque, which meant everything in the world. And seeing a lot of the old players, and it just meant everything to me, Greg. I can't tell you. I think the only other 2 or 3 things meant equal to me was I got to carry the Olympic torch in 2002 when the Winter Olympics were in Salt Lake, and it came through Fort Worth. And one of my friends nominated me, to carry the torch, and I got selected. And that was incredible. Wow. That was unbelievable. And then I think when I ran my first marathon, it was, such an accomplishment.
Sure, absolutely. And definitely want to get into, your running career a little more on beat baseball. I know before we started recording, we were chatting about injuries and, like you had said, any kind of activity, especially any sport, you are prone to potentially getting hurt. And I'm curious if you want to mention any injuries that you've, had in your beat ball career and kind of how you overcame those.
Well, I think the great thing about beat baseball, and you really do kind of learn how to fall. And then because I kept myself since I'm a runner, I always kept myself in extremely good physical shape. That makes a lot of difference. But, I had broke my ring finger twice, sprained ankle, pulled a muscle in my back a couple of times, couple of 3 bloody noses. So nothing really bad at all, just kind of your nothing that you would miss more than maybe a couple of games at.
Sure. And I know you had told me, in spite of those injuries, that it never really deterred you from coming back, from continuing on and getting up and dusting yourself off, right?
Never thought about it twice, because once again, with all the running I did, with the limited vision I had for years, I could still run on a track, but that, sometimes I would not see something on the track, and I broke a finger running because I tripped over a curb and fell. I ran into a blocking sled that was on the track. I ran into a fence that they had put across the track. I can't tell you how many different things, but I just, you just can't be scared. You've just got to know. You got to think, well, if I could see 2020 I was playing any sport, I'm going to have jammed fingers, broken fingers, anything you participate. The blindness has really not that much to do with it. It's just being active.
Absolutely. Yep. And I mean, just as people who are blind and visually impaired, we are kind of more vulnerable to bumping into things or just getting hurt in our day-to-day lives. So when it comes to sports, like you said, you kind of have to have that mindset of things are possible, but, the game is so enjoyable and there's so many benefits to participating that it's worth it to take that risk, right?
Right. Yeah. It's just something that you do. And, it's opportunity is part of, having the opportunity, something to pop and doing it, but be really willing to take a risk and do things that may be out of your comfort zone also is because it's so easy to sit back and be comfortable and not challenge yourself.
It's so true. Stepping outside the box and taking a chance, because who knows where that could lead.
Well, and I think that's a big thing I was always worried about because, I wanted to be independent and I didn't want to ask for help. And I was always kind of afraid of reaction or what, the sighted population would say. But, I found out that there's tons and tons of people out there. If you just put make the first move, there's so many people that are willing to do that. That's how, like beat baseball. When we started that, we didn't know who would come or not. And, we end up making lifelong friends with our spotters and pitchers. Same thing when Wendy Fagan came down here and started go ball, and then trying to find runners. You go out and just ask, and you found these amazing runners that were willing to help. And if you're not willing to ask or investigate, then you only have yourself to blame if you're stuck at home doing nothing.
Right, exactly. So speaking of running, I'm definitely curious about, I know you mentioned, I think in high school, kind of getting into track and field. And so when you first got into running, did you always have a guide? Or?
No, I could run on a track pretty well for many years until I was a senior in high school, and my field of vision got really bad where I had a tendency to maybe get out of my lane some. So I quit running in high school and kind of thought that was it. And then once again, moving to Fort Worth was kind of my godsend in so many ways because I'd only been here a few months, and I met, since I worked at the Commission for the Blind, we did a lot of work with the Lighthouse for the Blind. And they had 2 orientation mobility instructors there that were both runners. And since I always enjoyed running, I talked to them and they got me into long distance running. And I'd never run more than a mile in my life, as a sprinter. And then when I got that, I just fell in love with it and just, have done it ever since. I think I figured out, I don't think I've ever missed more than a week of running in 25 years.
Wow.
Every now and then you stop it, but now lately it's been a little harder because now then for the last 8 years, no, I guess it's been almost 10 years, I have to use the guide. I can't run on the track anymore. So, I got a tether that I use and runners come and go. And I've kind of hit a jackpot here. There was a program I found, or a person that told me about. It's called United We Stride. It was web-based, and I just went on and put in information. I was looking for a runner, my zip code, and other people that are interested in guiding. They're on that said web page, and so they, will answer you. And I found like 5 different runners now doing that, so I can run pretty consistently. In fact, I just finished a half marathon this morning.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. How did that go?
It was great. I did not do as fast as I would like, but at 72, I finished it in 2 hours and 20 minutes, so that was okay.
Wow. Wow. Not bad for your age.
No, not at all. I was pretty pleased.
Exactly. Yeah. I know you did mention the tethers, and I know there are different types of, hand tethers or waist tethers.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you have a preference on a tether when it comes to running?
Definitely the hand tether gives you a lot more flexibility, and I always worry because I've certainly fallen. Is I don't want to drag my runner down with me, So with the tether, you can hold it pretty, loose. And so if you do lose your balance, you can just let go of it, and you're not dragging your guy down on top of you.
Exactly. Yep.
Uh,
And then, so I know you did mention, one of your life highlights is the first marathon that you did run.
mm-hmm.
So talk to me about that experience.
It was. I had been, like I said, I've been doing some longer distance run, 10Ks and 5Ks, and they have a big race in Fort Worth called the Cowtown Marathon, and I had ran the 10K, and we'd finished, and we're watching all these marathoners, and I thought, oh my gosh, that would be so awesome. And right the next year, one of the colleges here, the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine, offered a marathon training program. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, that's the way to do it. So, there was about 20 or maybe more than that, 25 that are in it. Once a week, you would meet, and they would, give you tips on what to eat, what shoes, what to wear, training techniques. And then on Saturdays, you would have long runs as a group. And so going through that, I was able to do the marathon and do it right at, I completed it right under 4 hours, like 3 hours and 59 minutes. So.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. How did you feel? How did your body feel after that experience?
Like someone took a club to me. That old saying, the first 20 miles, it's doable, and those last 6, when you just burn all your energy, it's like a bear jumped on your back. So, but
right.
it was
wow.
It was awesome. And then also, you mentioned other sports. I've done skiing. I didn't do. I was 40 years old the first time I went skiing, and my Wendy that you mentioned was the one that taught me downhill skiing. Taught me how to paddle board, go ball. We'd done go ball. I've done tons of hiking. I've been to over half the national parks. Me and my wife are huge hikers. So she would use we call them bear bales, but they're just like bears, like you think of a reindeer's wearing, and she'd put them on her backpack, and I could hear her and follow her, and I used a hiking stick to kind of help myself over rocks and roots and stuff like that. And so we were huge hikers. And I was trying to think of any other sports. I've done rock climbing. All of this. It sounds like I'm gloating or bragging, but I'm not. There's all these anybody can do. It's just having, once again, that opportunity in programs like Envision that Wendy had talked about on one of your podcasts, or one of that gives young adults that opportunity to do that. And in meeting her, I was introduced to a lot of these and found out, I love these sports, and they have even blind soccer now, and I haven't played it. I'm really too old for that now, but just the variety of opportunities out there, incredible. And I'm sure encourage someone, even if you don't feel like you're athletically inclined, is, you can do walking, you can do tandem bike riding, you can do just to get out and get exercise, get those endorphins going and make you feel like $1,000,000.
Absolutely. Great words of encouragement. And I know, like you mentioned earlier, just going online and doing a little bit of research, like you found your guides for running. There's so much out there, no matter where you live, if it's an urban area, rural area, you can probably make some type of connection to find something that you can enjoy.
Yeah, with anybody that has internet connection now and can use Google, you can find a connection to get you places. And because if Google, you can find out about your podcast. You can find about like Hadley School for the Mind. You find all these places. If you don't know it, there's someone out there that does know it.
Absolutely. Well said. I think great way to wrap up here. Alrighty, so again, we've been chatting with Scott Hudson, beat baseball Hall of Famer, a longtime runner, marathoner. And Scott, first off, thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed the conversation. Congrats on all of your achievements and hardware that you've, collected over the years. And really, really appreciate you taking the time here.
Well, thanks so much, Greg. And I certainly want to encourage all your listeners to do what I said, get on Google, find some sport that you're interested in, bowling or whatever, and get out there and meet people, because you'll be surprised how many people are willing to help if you just give them the chance.
Absolutely. Very well said.
Thanks so much, Greg.
Thanks, Scott. To hear more episodes of the Eyes Free Sports podcast and to subscribe, search for Eyes Free Sports on your favorite podcast platform or visit eyesfreesports.com. Be sure to follow the Eyes Free Sports podcast at facebook.com/eyesfreesports and on Twitter @eyesfreesports.